Well, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you for inviting me down to this special service, Obon. And as you can tell, I remembered to bring my robes for special services. Terry asked me if I was a list person, and one of the things on my list was make sure you bring the fancy robes. So I wanted you to know there's 3 different robes that we wear. One is called kokoe. It's the black robe. And that one we usually wear to funerals. And for some reason, I think we wear it on New Year's Eve services. And it colors in the Buddhist tradition, I don't want to go into this now, but different traditions wear different colors for different occasions, and a lot of it's cultural. Traditionally in Buddhism, you wear white to funerals. You'll see that in the Vietnamese tradition. We wear black, which resonates more, I think, with Western people, because you usually think of wearing black in mourning, but it really doesn't have anything to do with that. In China, I was told that Buddhists wear saffron robes, but in China, I guess that was the color they used for criminals or prisoners, kind of like So they changed the color to black in China, and black is a Taoist religious color. So there's all this mixing of there's a pun in there, mixing of colors. So it's very interesting. And then this is called the shikie, I think, the shikie. So Reverend Radha will say, we're going to wear shikie tomorrow. And you got to know that means the colored robes. And I tend to overgeneralize, or I invent my own translations. I assume that shikie meant green, lime green, but it just means colored robes. And then we also have another robe that we usually wear for weddings, which makes sense in the West, but that's just a coincidence. It's called a byakue, it's white. So there's a really pretty white robe that we usually wear. And I think we wear it on Shinran's memorial, I think, too. So I have trouble because there's exceptions to the rules. So, I can't just say, we always wear lime green on all special services. That's not true. So I have to, and it's really embarrassing to be all dressed up and walk into the room and everybody's wearing white. You're like, oh. That means you're late to service now, and it means you have to refold all this. So I wanted to talk, I think I have a 2-part talk today. I wanted to talk a little bit about Obon before I began my general talk. So the first thing I'd like to show you and to talk a little bit is about enigmatic smiles. There's one really famous enigmatic smile in the West, and there's a really famous one in the East that I really like, and I wanted to show it to you. So, this is probably the most famous enigmatic smile, I think, in Western culture, the Mona Lisa. To this day, people are still debating, is she flirting? Is she shy? Is her feelings hurt? It's very hard to tell. Like one corner's up and maybe one corner's a little bit down. And it's also in her eyes. So this has been a big debate for art historians and the general public alike. And then I want to show you my most favorite enigmatic smile in Buddhism. This is an image I got from Reverend Tetsuo Uno. He says, and I believe him, that this is a picture or a statue, an image of a statue of Moggallana. So the Buddha had a lot of disciples that followed him, and there was kind of an inner circle of 10 or 20. And if you read the sutras, this cast of characters keeps appearing in the sutras. And they all had different personalities. They had different ways of practicing. And I tell people, it depends on what generation you're in. But I did this with the youth retreat this past week, and nobody got any of my cultural references because they're too young. They're in high school, and every cultural reference I made, they just went. So, John Wayne had a lot of the same actors in his movies. Nothing. I got nothing from the kids. Humphrey Bogart, Clint Eastwood, Adam Sandler, Will Ferrell. Nobody. And even Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt. There's that clique of actors. There's also the one with Jennifer Lawrence, right? She's got her group. that she acts in. So after the Buddha, the topmost disciple's name was Shariputra, and he was very academic. He studied a lot. He was very philosophical, and he was really good at teaching. So that's kind of how he came. That was his keyhole or doorway into Buddhism. And that was kind of my doorway. When I first started practicing Buddhism, I grew up Protestant Christian, and I was looking for doctrine and philosophy, and I came to Buddhism through books. It was very common. But Moggallana is the second highest ranking disciple, and he came to Buddhism through spiritual intuition and insight and practice. So he doesn't say much, but he really knows a lot. So if you're that type of person and you practiced under Moggallana, I don't think he would give you that much direction or that much lecture or that much explanation, but he'd ask you to sit or to chant or to reflect on the flame burning on a candle. And so Moggallana was very intuitive and very practice-oriented. But the interesting thing is that Moggallana and Sariputra were best of friends. So even though they approached Buddhism in totally different ways, perhaps they complemented one another, and they would share students. If Moggallana got a student who was really kind of logical and rational, he'd send him over to Shariputra, and they'd come back the other way as well. So Moggallana, his eyes are kind of half open, half closed. And the other thing I like about Moggallana is I like his hair. But his eyes are half open, gently half open, half closed, like in a meditation posture. And then he's got a very, very subtle smile on his face, like the Mona Lisa. And this kind of represents the fact that for Moggallana, he just got it. It's so easy. It's just right there. It's within arm's reach. All you have to do is let it come to you. And so this is kind of an image of somebody practicing Buddhism who has a moment of insight. And so he's very calm, he's very relaxed, and it's almost, it brings a smile to his face, how easy it is if you just let it come to you. And that's his style of Buddhism. And I have this, I don't know how I got this. I think Reverend Uno, he gave this out on a really high quality paper, and I think I scanned it, and now I have this really nice digital image, and I also have it framed in my office. So the reason why we bring up Moggallana is he's a major character for Obon. It's actually a story about Moggallana. So I don't know if you guys remember this. This is another really old cultural reference that only people over 50 or 40 would know. This is Jane Seymour, and she was in that show, Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. Okay, so I'm going to go even further back in time. We're going to go back to 1987. I was watching PBS one night, and there was a mini-series on PBS called Japan. It was done in 1987, and I watched it in like 2008 or something. She was super young, and this was like a travelogue or narrative documentary on Japan. And the reason why I bring this up is she explained a lot of things about Japanese culture, and one of them was Obon. And in Japan, there's three major religious traditions. There's Shinto, Buddhism, and Confucianism. And they all three get mixed up kind of in Obon. It's very interesting. They have a set of holidays in Japan, and each one of the three major religions kind of appropriates it and interprets it within their tradition. So when I was watching her explain Obon, I was I was thinking, we don't do that. That's not how we think of it. Where did that come from? And then she did say something that sounded very Buddhist. And I realized throughout the entire documentary, this kind of happens in Japan. These three different practice traditions, spiritual traditions, commingle. A lot more in Japan than, say, we do in the West. For us, religions are usually mutually exclusive. They don't commingle much in America. But being a Buddhist minister, I'm going to give the Buddhist interpretation of Obon. just like I wish Jane Seymour did. So, Obon, or just Bon, is a Japanese Buddhist custom to honor, I think I made a typo, to honor one's ancestors. So sometimes in the West, this is referred to in a pejorative way as ancestor worship, like worshiping spirits. Sometimes they use the word spirits. And then you start to think of ghosts coming back, on Obon. So this is kind of drifting off the Buddhist meaning of it. So, and the other thing I wanted to mention is this O here is an honorific. So whenever you see Obon, the reason why they drop the O is whether you're using this honorific out of respect. So the people from Japan always say Obon, and the people from Hawaii always say Bon, because they're Hawaiian and they're more casual. So we have a large group of Hawaiian Japanese people, and we have a large group of Japanese people, and it's just a cultural difference. The Hawaiians are much more, they're on island time. They're much more informal. So, now this is where we get into the Buddhist part. Obon is a shortened form for the Ulambana Sutra. So there's a sutra called Ulambana, and when it comes into China and Japan, it starts to be pronounced as Obon. So I thought that was very interesting. So the holiday is actually patterned after a Buddhist sutra. And it has the Sanskrit meaning of hanging upside down, which implies great suffering. But the way I was taught is it shows a lack of insight, a lack of seeing things clearly. The world looks upside down, everything looks backwards to you, but it's not the world, right? It's your perspective. The reason things look off is because you're hanging upside down, and you need to right yourself to see things clearly. So in this story, Moggallana is, it's about the relationship between him and his mother, and their relationship to Buddhism. And so when his mother dies, he begins to feel that his mother was never serious enough about Buddhism. I think a lot of these disciples of the Buddha, they really wanted to convert their mom and dad to Buddhism. So Moggallana really wished his mother had become more devout, maybe joined a monastery. And the Buddha asked Moggallana, he didn't give him a teaching on interdependence, but he asked Moggallana to make offerings and donations to other monks, and to sit and reflect and look upon his mother's life. And the more he did that, he began to see the true nature of her past selflessness and the sacrifices she had made for him during her lifetime. So he realizes that it was because of her that he was able to become the second most important Buddhist disciple in the Sangha, not in spite of her. And that she was actually more selfless and a deeper practicing Buddhist maybe than he was, because she sacrificed everything so that he could practice the way and dedicate his life to the practice of Buddhism. So he kind of realizes what he received, and he feels a little ashamed of judging her and maybe not appreciating her while she was alive. And then when he realizes that, he is so happy about realizing like the true karma or the true depth of his mother, that he's so grateful by her many kindnesses that he begins to dance with joy. He dances. So this is another common theme in Buddhism. When somebody realizes insight or wisdom or awakening, they dance with joy. Uncontrollable, spontaneous dancing, which is called odori, to dance. So this is where we get the story and why we celebrate Obon. It's based on this story of Moggallana reflecting on the depth of practice of his mother that he'd never really seen or appreciated because he was looking at things upside down. So that's why we practice Obon. Jane Seymour. So this is the beginning of part 2 of the talk. we just had a lot of graduations in June. Carol Bonamo teases me that I always bring that song, Wear Sunscreen, for the class of 1999. I didn't bring that this time. But I did want to talk about graduating and all the different valedictorian speeches I hear. There was a whole bunch on YouTube and on Huffington Post and on CNN that I listened to. There was one really radical one. I don't know if you saw it south of here. One valedictorian called out a bunch of her teachers. It was a big scandal. I wasn't really sure how to interpret that, but lots of different talks. And I kind of want to talk about two ways of looking at your achievements in life. And it has to do with Obon. If you reflect on what you received, it changes the way you see the things that you've achieved in your life. So the first thing I want to show you, this is so what happens in China is they developed their own writing system called kanji. And I think Ji means character. So like, you know, emojis, that's the same Ji. Emojis like emotional characters, little emotional character pictures. Kanji means like Chinese characters. So Japan had its own language, its own grammar, its own vocabulary, but they didn't have a writing system. So kanji, along with Buddhism, comes into Japan. And what the Japanese did is they took the kanji and they took little pieces out of it and made a more simplified writing that just represents sounds, and that's hiragana. So this is one of the easiest hiragana you can learn. It's the sound ka. This is the character for the sound ka. So what's neat about, one of the hard parts about Japanese is they have different words for everything. That's a Steve joke from Steve Martin. They have a different word for everything. They also, but one of the good things is the spelling's really easy. It's like Spanish. The ka sound, this character is ka, no matter what its neighbors are. And English isn't like that, right? It depends on who your neighbor is and where you are in the sentence. My wife always says, when two vowels go a-walkin', the first one does the talkin'. So you don't have that in Japanese, right? Ka is always ka. So you really don't have to study for a Japanese spelling test. Just like Spanish, if your ear is really good, you just write what you hear. One of the difficulties with Japanese, though, is the verb is at the back of the sentence instead of the front. So the grammar is a little different, which is difficult. But this is the symbol for ka. So if your name was Tanaka, and you wrote it in this simplified form, you'd use this character at the end. And then there's another there's another alphabet they use for foreign words. So this is kind of cool. I love this when I took Japanese. This is the katakana ka. And you could tell they look, I loved this when I took Japanese. If they look just like each other, like we're good. All I have to remember is that little thing on the side. So this you would use for foreign words. Like I said, my name was Gian Tana, right? So they would use katakana for my name because I'm not a Japanese national. So, McDonald's, hamburger, those kind of words would be spelled with this character set. And then, remember I told you these come from a little bit of kanji? So this is great too. I love this. These are the good ones. This is the kanji that these came from. So, this is one of the easy parts. This was like the one letter that was easy. So, this is the kanji that those other two characters came from for sound. But this is a Chinese character, and it represents an idea, or it's a symbol for something. So this character is pronounced Riki. And Reverend Rada's son, I thought his name was Ricky, but his name's Riki. So, you can call him Ricky, but it's not Ricky, it's Riki. And this is the character for power or control. And I don't know if it was Marcus Camby, and nobody at OCBC knew who Marcus Camby was. I think he played at Massachusetts. A lot of NBA basketball players will get this character tattooed on their shoulder, big for power, for power. But you have to be careful when you get kanji tattoos. I don't know if you heard that Ariana Grande, she tried to get a tattoo on her hand that was 7 rings for a song she did called 7 Rings. And I don't really understand all this, but it turned out to be the kanji for a small Japanese barbecue. So you have to be very careful. You can't just say, oh, I'm going to get the character for 7, and I'm going to get the character for rings, and I'm going to permanently tattoo it on my body, because they'll say that's a small Japanese barbecue. So this kind of thing happens a lot. You have to be very careful. So I wanted to talk about 2 terms in our tradition that use this character. This is the first one. It's 2 characters. This is called ji-riki. And that character on the left is pronounced ji, and the one on the right we already know is riki. And if you translate this literally, it's self-power. Self-power. And to me, when I first heard this term, I thought it meant effort, trying hard, doing a lot of work. So, but that's not quite what it means. And the reason why is because 2 things are going on. We're translating it literally, and we're also splitting the compound. So these 2 characters aren't independent, and we're reading them. They're glued together in a compound representing a concept. And we've talked about this before. A lot of times we don't have a word in English for this. So we just don't have a single word for this concept. But it's a way of thinking. It's not working hard or trying hard. It's the idea that you have self-control and that you have power of all the events in your life and that you're responsible. And if you try hard enough, anything you want, you can achieve. It's that type of thinking. And then kind of the analog to that is a character, this concept called tariki. And literally, that character on the left means other. So this, literally translated, is other power. So to me, when I first came here, I thought this was higher power. Sometimes we'll say we leave our practice to other power. It sounds like a god or some other person is doing the work. But it's really, again, it's a concept, a way of thinking. Other power is realizing that everything you achieve and everything you do in your life is the result of others, causes and conditions and influences, and that you're part of this. I mean, you're an active participant in your life, but much more of what goes on in your life is due to those around you than through being an independent actor. It's much less being an independent actor as it is being connected and part of something bigger. So I wanted to show you the danger of breaking up compounds into their separate kanji and then translating it in that way. I looked this up on the internet. You know what these are called, right? On the side, not in the middle. These are bookends, right? But a bookend is a thing, right? It's these huge ceramic marble things that you can buy that hold up your books. That's what a bookend is. A bookend, if you're not careful, it's not this, right? So, if I was Japanese and I learned the word bookend and they told me to go to the store and get bookends, I might think they were talking about the end of a book, but that's because I'm breaking up the compound. So I think we do this a lot in English. You have to be very careful about translations and maybe being too literal and being wary of breaking up compounds. So what I'd like to talk about, maybe this is part 3, I'd like to give you an example of other power thinking. When I go to graduation speeches, a lot of times the valedictorian gives a speech about trying hard, studying hard, and achieving whatever you want in life. And, the Tokyo Olympics are coming in 2020. There's 2 ways of looking at your achievements if you win a gold medal. One is you deserve it, you worked for it, you outworked everyone, and it's your medal. And then there's other athletes who seem to be shocked and amazed that they got a gold medal. They had a performance of their lifetime. It's an out-of-body experience, and they thank their coaches and their parents and the good fortune of genetics and how lucky they are to have been able to compete at that elite level. And so this is the Big Bang Theory. It was on for 12 seasons. It just had its series finale. And on the left is, I almost said Bernadette Peters, Bernadette Rostenkowski, and she marries Howard Wolowitz, so they're married. And then this over here is Leonard Hofstadter, and he marries Penny. And one of the big things I heard on the internet, to me it's not that interesting, but we never find out what Penny's maiden name is. That's like the big thing. They were hoping on the series finale they'd finally drop. You know, like remember Cosmo Kramer from Seinfeld? They were hoping we'd find out. We never found out what Penny's maiden name was, so she's just Penny Hofstadter. That's as good as it gets. And then this is Sheldon Cooper, and I love this name, Amy Farrah Fowler. They get married. So there's 3 couples, and then I always felt sorry for Raj Koothrappali. He goes 12 years of bad dating luck. I don't know. I thought the finale would be he gets married, but that wasn't it. So what happens is Sheldon is, he seems to be on the spectrum. He seems to be, it seems to be Asperger's. He doesn't connect well with people. He doesn't have empathy. He doesn't read the room. He's honest to the point of being hurtful. But he slowly grows over time through his relationship over 12 years with these deep friends. And they kind of teach him what it means to be a human being. And it's very difficult for him. It's very, very difficult for him to say, I love you. It's very hard for him to verbalize how he feels. And so, but the difference between this show and Seinfeld, I really, really like Seinfeld, but Jerry Seinfeld said the point of the show was not a show about nothing, but even deeper than that, there was no growth, he said. Nobody grew, nobody changed, nobody got better. And I thought that was such a... I like shows where there's an arc of the hero. People grow and change. There's somebody I care about. And so I really appreciated this show for that reason. So on the season series finale, the title is I Couldn't Do It Alone. So this is this other power thinking, that he couldn't live his life without the support and friendship of his friends and family. So what happens is, I think the show jumps ahead like 5 years, and we find out that Amy Farrah Fowler and Sheldon Cooper collaborate, and they win the Nobel Prize together. They win the Nobel Prize. So remember, the way you win the Nobel Prize is you have to predict something, and then somebody has to prove it experimentally. And it has to be earth-shaking, groundbreaking, and they win the Nobel Prize. And it's time for Sheldon to give his speech, his acceptance speech, in Stockholm, I think. Okay? And he has this long speech that's all me, right? I'm the smartest guy in the room. I have the highest IQ. He's been like this for 12 years. He's always been the smartest guy in the room. He's always been condescending. He doesn't suffer fools gladly. And what he does is he puts his speech away, and he begins to talk about his mother and his father and his grandma. I think his pet name for her was Meemaw. So I wanted you to hear this. This is the opposite of self-power. This is other power. So you still can achieve great things. You still can have an incredibly meaningful life. It's how you interpret it and how you understand your place in the world.
I have a very long and somewhat self-centered speech here, but I'd like to set it aside. Yeah. Because this honor doesn't just belong to me. I wouldn't be up here if it weren't for some very important people in my life, beginning with my mother, father, Meemaw, brother and sister, and my other family, who I'm so happy to have here with us. I was under a misapprehension that my accomplishments were mine alone. Nothing could be further from the truth. I have been encouraged, sustained, inspired, and tolerated, not only by my wife, but by the greatest group of friends anyone ever had. I'd like to ask them to stand. Dr. Rajesh Kuthapalli, Dr. Bernadette Rostenkowski-Wolowitz, astronaut Howard Wolowitz, and my two dearest friends in the world, Penny Hofstadter and Dr. Leonard Hofstadter. Howard, Bernadette, Raj, Penny, Leonard. I apologize if I haven't been the friend you deserve. But I want you to know, in my way, I love you all. And I love you. Thank you.
So I just thought this was a really wonderful way to end 12 years. This is the type of transformation, spiritual transformation, that we look to provide and practice in the Buddhist tradition. Obon is a great example of that. I heard on the internet yesterday somewhere that we can remember back to our parents, our grandparents, and maybe our great-grandparents. But there's generations upon generations that are lost to history. And all those people, not just 3 generations back, but 5, 6, 7, 8, were huge influences on our life. They're the ones that maybe came to America. They were the ones who established the trajectory of our families. They picked the careers and the trades that we went into. And so, by coincidence, another person told me the other day that some religious scholars say that the only time you can really express spiritual depth and really feel connected as one is when you dance. And I think this was a Christian minister, that it's through dance that we lose our sense of self and we dance in a group. It's a communal activity in which we all feel connected in one. And you lose your sense of self-awareness and you just let the music move you. And so, to Jane Seymour, I would say we don't dance for our ancestors, but we dance with them. We are dancing with them, and we feel that deep connection and that deep bond we share with everyone that had a deep impact on our lives. And this would be insight. That's an example of Sheldon turning his life around 180 degrees and living a whole new way of life. He's no longer upside down. Sheldon's now seeing the world clearly. He's made the greatest personal achievement you can have. He won the Nobel Prize, and yet it didn't go to his head, right? He's receiving it on behalf of all those who helped him get to where he is. And that's an other power orientation in life. So please join me in Gashua.